Hi everyone and welcome! I am Wanja Gröger, also known as Nechtan, and this video is a detailed, in-depth, you could almost call it scientific, review of the Xvive U4 wireless in-ear monitoring system. Have fun and enjoy! First of all, for those of you who might not know exactly what this thing is and what it does, well, basically when it comes down to it, it is just replacing a cable with a wireless connection. Now, what does this have to do with drumming? Well, when I play the drums, I always use my in-ear monitors. First of all, they are ear protection, but second, with them I can hear metronome, click track or whatever song I want to play to, and also they are there for monitoring purposes. For example, I like to hear my kick trigger, which is especially important for all the super fast double bass and single foot blast beat stuff that I like to play. So, I put these in, and then I plug this end usually into an audio interface or a mix desk or wherever all the interesting sounds come from that I want to be able to hear. Now I can hear everything and this is all cool, but this also means that I'm now tethered to the spot with this cable. And this is where the Xvive U4 comes in. Now I simply plug myself into the receiver, plug the transmitter into my audio interface or mix desk or whatever, and then I have a wireless connection. That means I can basically get up from the drums, walk around, do whatever I want and still stay connected. So now that you know what this is and what this does, let us get straight into the actual review. I will review and test this device in basically every way that I can come up with, so that in the end you can take much more away from this video than just, this seems to be cool. Also a disclaimer here, Xvive was so friendly to send me this for review purposes, but I don't get money from them. And this is good because I want this to be an actual review and not a simple advertisement. But now let's get right into it. Let us begin with a brief overview over the technical specifications of this device. Right here on the front of the package you can already see the three most important things. The range, which is more than 90 feet, which equals around 27 meters. Less than 5 milliseconds delay, and 5 hours of battery life. And don't worry, we will test all these parameters later in the video. On the back side of the package you can see even more technical data. This all seems pretty standard to me, so I won't go over all of it, but I want to point out two things here. First of all, the wireless transmission operates on the 2.4 GHz broadcast frequency. And this is really important. Usually, radio frequencies are very strictly regulated in all countries around the world, and the regulations are very different from country to country. But the 2.4 GHz spectrum, that is free for public use everywhere all around the world. So no matter if you have a gig in Berlin, New York, Tokyo, Rio de Janeiro, Dar es Salaam or Sydney, you can take this thing with you, use it, and you won't get into trouble with this. The second thing I want to point out is that this device transmits a mono signal and not a stereo signal. So just for listening to normal music, this would probably suck a little bit, but for using this on stage, well, it doesn't really matter. I mean, when you just have a normal stage monitor, it is also just in mono, and every signal I use on my in-ear monitoring is also centered. So for me it doesn't matter at all if this is mono or stereo. But now let us take a look at the thing itself. So here we have the transmitter and the receiver, everything nicely packaged. But there's also a lot more in here. Let's take a look. So first we have a bag here for transport and storage, nice. Next up, both transmitter and receiver have an inbuilt battery, and you can charge this battery with this cable here. And the nice thing about this cable is you can charge both of them at the same time. Next we have a little adapter here, which is really useful because that means you can plug the transmitter either into an XLR socket or into a jack socket. And I really prefer this because I like to plug this into the headphone output of my audio interface. Next, let me say a few words about the manual. First of all, it is very well written and very easy to understand, and with that already a lot better than many other manuals I have seen in my time. This contains mainly a lot of info on all the technical specifications, a detailed description of everything, and also a troubleshooting guide. Also, because I live in Germany, I got the manual in English and in German. Well, for me personally, it doesn't matter that much, but I know that many of my fellow Germans are not very proficient with English, so this is nice. But by far the greatest feature of this manual is that, wait for it, you don't actually need it. This is really great because everything is so simple and self-explanatory that unless you want to look up something very specific or run into trouble, you actually do not need the manual at all. So, goodbye. Let's take a closer look. First of all, both units have a kind of comfortable weight to them. They feel kind of solid and not just some cheap flimsy plastic thing. So, this is the transmitter. This is all made out of metal. Of course, this also. This grey stuff is plastic, but it seems to be quite solid and robust. And also, nothing moves here, everything is quite solidly built. The switches do have some resistance to them and are also very flat, so they won't break off or something. And this button here seems also to be okay. This here is the lock for the XLR connector. So overall, this seems to be quite good. Also when I shake it, it doesn't make any sounds or something. So yeah, it makes the impression of being quite robust and solid. By the way, this is where you plug in the USB charger cable. The receiver is also built quite solidly. The whole housing is made out of metal. So all this is quite solid and robust. The only thing plastic is the cover in front, which covers the antenna. Regarding the moving parts, we have a volume knob here, which offers some resistance, which is good, so this won't move easily by accident. We have a little button here, that seems to be fine. And the only thing that seems to be a little bit flimsy is the power switch here on top. Well, it doesn't stick out too far, so it shouldn't break off, so it should be fine. But still, it seems to be not as solid as all the other stuff on this device. One thing I also want to talk about is the socket, because this gives a really nice and secure connection. Unlike some MP3 players or smartphones, this is a much more solid connection, and this is really important for a device like this, which is also supposed to be used on stage, etc. So yeah, this is pretty good. When it comes to the functionality of this device, there are two major points that really stand out to me, and these are simplicity and user-friendliness. When you use this for the very first time, the only thing you have to do is to simply switch on both devices. So let's switch on the receiver and also the transmitter. And now you can immediately see this green LED indicating a stable connection. So all you have to do is simply switch on and it just works. So this is completely plug and play. The next thing you might want to do is to adjust the volume, and well, here on the receiver we have the volume knob, which is kind of hard to miss. And this is already everything you need to know to actually use the Xvive U4. Just switch on both devices, transmitter and receiver, and adjust the volume, and that's basically it. You are ready to go. Of course, you can do a little bit more with these. For example, you can switch channels. So if several people are using these on stage, you might want to make sure that everyone has his or her own channel. You can change the channels with these buttons here. You see the channel indicators here. You have 6 channels available. Now both devices are on channel 1. Transmitter and receiver always have to be on the same channel to connect. So if I now change the channel to number 2 on the transmitter, for example, you will see here that the connection will be immediately lost. But now I of course can also change the receiver to channel number 2, and then the connection will be there again. So in theory you could operate up to 6 different separate wireless connections with Xvive U4s on stage. There's also a second reason why you might want to change channel, and that is if you have some bad interference on the channel you are on. As I said earlier, this runs on the 2.4 GHz frequency, which is also a frequency very often used by, for example, Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. So if you should have problems with interference, simply change the channel and then you should be fine. So we have power switches, volume knob and buttons for changing channels. And that's basically it. The only switch on these two devices which I didn't immediately know what it was about was this one here, between line and aux. Basically one boosts the volume a little bit and the other does not, but all this is already explained on the package itself. So even for that I didn't have to look at the manual. The only thing left I didn't cover yet are the battery indicator LEDs. We have one here and two here. And if these shine red, you have less than 30% battery power, and if these start blinking, then you have less than 10%. So, and that's basically it. All in all, I gotta say, in terms of user-friendliness and simplicity, 10 out of 10. But now, let's put this through some serious testing. The first thing that I'm going to test here is the delay. Does this thing really have less than 5 milliseconds delay? We'll see in a moment. For the purpose of this, I have set up a little experiment. Let me quickly show it to you. So, this is my recording station. This is my laptop, and this is my audio interface. At the back of this, there are all the microphones going in that I use for recording drums. Now, on the front side, we have two different headphone outputs here. These are now really important, because into one of them, I have plugged in my in-ear monitors, and into the other input, I have plugged in my normal Sennheiser in-ears, which I just use for listening to music. And now let's see where this leads. This here. So I have taped each of the different sets of headphones to a different microphone. This here and the Sennheisers over here. I will now play a metronome click with my studio software, which goes out through the two different outputs to my headphones, and then I will record what the two different microphones pick up. This is just the control, the first stage of the experiment. In the end, when I look at what I then recorded, I should be able to see that on both tracks from both microphones the click is exactly at the same time. If this is the case, then I know the experiment works, and then I will initiate the second stage, which will be unplugging my in-ear monitors and replacing this cable connection with the Xvive U4 wireless. And then I can see how far the click that is going over the wireless lags behind the click that is just going over the normal cable connection. So, let's begin. Experiment stage 1, control. Let's go. And record. Okay, that should be enough. Let's take a closer look. First of all, I will increase this so we make sure we can actually see the metronome clicks. And now let's zoom in. Okay, so even if we really zoom into the maximum, we can see that these pretty much start at almost exactly the same time. Yeah, so this is really just, this is basically exactly at the same time. So, I would say the control is a success, so let's now do the real experiment. So, for stage 2, let's now unplug this and instead use the Xvive. Power on. Here also, power on. Yep, connection stable. And let's plug this in here. So we now have a wireless connection here and a cable connection here. And now let's repeat the experiment. Experiment stage 2. Let's go. Record. Okay, so let's take a closer look. This will be the moment of truth. Let's zoom in. First of all, we should increase the volume a little bit to make sure we can see everything clearly. Okay, we can already see that there is a slight delay. So the question is now, how much is this delay? We'll figure this out in a second. So, first of all, let's put this over here. Wait a second. Up here we can see these numbers. These are basically our seconds. And this here, this area from here to here, this is 1/100th of a second. So in here, this is divided into 10 little subparts, and each of these subparts is therefore 1 millisecond. Now let's see and determine if the delay between this and this is less than 5 milliseconds. So this would be 1 millisecond, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Yes, we can clearly see the delay is slightly less than 5 milliseconds. So the Xvive U4 has definitely passed the delay test. In the next test I will test how long the batteries on the Xvive U4 will actually last. For this I have set up here at my home my little test station here. And what I will do now is simply run a metronome, switch on the U4. So now I can hear the metronome. And well, now I'll simply start a stopwatch. So, oh wait, it's too bright, so you can see it. And then I will always keep this around, so I can always hear if the metronome is still running. Yeah, this will probably annoy the hell out of me, but well, sacrifices have to be made. So, let's see how long the batteries will last. So, as you can see, we are at almost 6 hours, and now the LED, the red LED went on, which indicates that we have less than 30% left, but it's still running. Okay, so yeah, I don't know what to say, honestly. I mean, it's almost 6 in the morning, I'm really tired, I want to get to sleep, but this thing is still running. Yeah, well, we have just passed the 10-hour mark, and this thing is still making annoying noises. Yeah, still the red LED is on, but it does not flash. That means this thing still has more than 10% left in the battery. Same goes for the transmitter. So, well, this could really go on for another hour or something. Yeah. The metronome is somewhere at something around bar 45,000 something. Completely insane. Yeah, well, I don't know really what to say to this because, well, it said battery life 5 hours. This is clearly a lot more. I mean, this is twice the amount already, and still the device is not finished yet. So, yeah, it's just insane. So I guess you could say this test is absolutely passed, and the Xvive U4 massively over-delivers on the battery lifetime. Well, I mean, of course, this is inside and not outdoors, so maybe the conditions are good, but still, I mean, it's twice the amount of time. I mean, this is really insane. Yeah, well, with this test being over, I give up, I want to sleep. I don't want to do this to the end. So, yeah, I guess it's time for the next test. But for now, I'll go to sleep. So, here I'm back again. It was a short night. It is a beautiful morning here in Hamburg, well, aka middle of the day. Well, it doesn't matter anyway. The reason why I'm outdoors is because I want to test the range of this thing. The test setup is pretty straightforward. Here is the transmitter. And I have the receiver in my hand, and as soon as I switch it on, I should receive the signal with the beautiful, lovely metronome sound, which I had to listen to the whole last night. So, yeah, from here on I will slowly go backwards. I measured some distances, for example, to one particular stunted little tree over there. It is exactly 27 meters, which is supposed to be the maximum range of this thing. So, let's see. So, now we are at exactly 27 meters, and this thing still works. So, I gotta say, the Xvive U4 passes this test. But of course I want to know where the limits are, so I'll just go on.
Okay, now we see slight disturbances in the signal. Connection is not 100% stable anymore. And we are now at over 30 meters. But if I turn the antenna towards the transmitter, then the signal is clear again. Let's see how far we can push this. Okay, so now I actually reached the back wall. Now we can hear again the signal is getting a little distorted. So I now reached the back wall and we are now at 50 meters. Yeah, the signal is not 100% stable anymore. So for all practical purposes, the maximum range is probably 27 meters, but you can kind of push it a little bit further. So we are now at 50 meters. Yeah, and with that, I would definitely say the Xvive passed the range test and even kind of over-delivered on the maximum range, although at this kind of range the connection is not as stable anymore. But you also got to keep in mind there are a lot of Wi-Fi networks around here, so maybe that interference is also playing some part. Speaking of Wi-Fi, I'm not sure if I actually mentioned this, but the 2.4 GHz frequency that the Xvive U4 runs on, this is also often used by Wi-Fi and by Bluetooth. So this now is a little test to see if Wi-Fi can actually kind of interfere with the transmission. So the setup is again pretty simple. We have my laptop with little interface and the transmitter here. Transmitting our lovely click again. We have here the receiver. And as soon as I switch it on, yes, it works. So now we go out of my room and to my Wi-Fi box down here. By the way, I'm letting a video run up here on my cell phone to make sure the Wi-Fi is actually transmitting something. So far we seem to have no problems, but when I get really close to the Wi-Fi box, the LED starts to flicker faintly and the signal is slightly disturbed sometimes. Yeah, maybe you can hear it a little bit. Yeah, but well, in general, I mean, all the tests that I did here at my home, I have many Wi-Fi networks around here, and it hasn't been a problem so far. So yeah, unless you directly put your receiver next to a Wi-Fi router, you should be fine. Okay, before I forget it, just one more thing to add. I cycled through different channels, but it seems to be pretty much the same story on every one of them. Almost no distortion unless you really hold it very close to the Wi-Fi. So, we have one more test that I want to do, and that is, I would call it the obstacle course. Let's see if this thing can go through walls. Well, this wasn't supposed to become a YouTuber house tour, but well, anyway. This here, well, is our transmitter again with the laptop, and I have the receiver in my hand. As soon as I switch it on, yeah, we can again hear our click. And now, let's see. We have one wall, two walls, and if I get out to the staircase, three walls. And as you can see and hear, this still perfectly works. So yeah, even though there are a couple of walls, there should be no problem. Now you might think to yourself, well, normal walls, that's nothing special, but what if I want to play a gig in, let's say, an old Second World War bunker? Well, welcome back to my rehearsal room, which is in fact located in an old World War II bunker. So first of all, let us test if this thing goes through an interior bunker wall. We have our familiar setup here with the metronome running and the transmitter. And now let's see what this wall does to the signal. This is a lot thicker and more solid than those flimsy civilian walls back at my place. Just to make sure, let's close the door. Okay, so now let's see. Yeah, seems to be no problem. Maybe this is too easy. Maybe we could walk a little bit. Well, now here we finally had the signal flicker a little bit, but it still seems to work. Yeah, well, maybe this is still not big enough of a test. So this is going to be the final boss, the exterior bunker wall, around 1 meter of massive concrete and steel. Let's see how it fares here. Let's go outside. Okay, still working. Okay, now the signal starts flickering and it goes out. No, this doesn't work. So, well, the Xvive U4 does not transmit a signal through 1 meter of steel concrete. And to be honest, this really doesn't come as a surprise, because in here in the bunker I don't even have cell phone reception.
So after all these tests, there's still one more thing that I want to discuss, and that is the simple but very important question of, is this actually a useful device? The simple answer to that is yes, it is. The more complex answer is this. In the beginning, I gotta admit I was a little skeptical, because as a drummer you're sitting in the same place most of the time, so what would you need a wireless for? Well, the answer quickly came to me once I started using it, because it's not so much about the time when you're sitting down at the drum set, just playing the drums, but more about everything that happens around that. It starts with simple things, like for example when you just practice drums using the U4. I mean, from time to time you get up to get something to drink, maybe you readjust something on your drum set, maybe you want to change over to your practice pad. And well, to be able to do all this without having to worry about the cable, without having to unplug, plug, unplug, plug all the time, this is great. This is really giving me a feeling of basically total freedom. And this is even more the case when it comes to, for example, recording drums for an album or being in a band rehearsal. I mean, you have to get up and readjust stuff all the time, like retuning the drums, maybe if you're filming yourself, restarting or readjusting cameras, all this kind of stuff, or maybe stand up and readjust something on the mix desk when something is too loud or not loud enough. And you can do all this while still having your in-ears in, staying connected, and you won't have to worry about the cable. This is really, I've realized this is like something, only when you have it, you know what you have been missing before. I have really realized that this has been making my workflow a lot better, a lot more relaxed and much, much easier. The first time I used the U4 was when I recorded a drum playthrough for my band Keep of Colosine, which you can, by the way, check out here. And well, after this recording session I knew I do not want to go back to not using the U4, because it really enhanced my workflow and made my life as a drummer just so much easier. Another thing is playing live. I mean, when you think about it, of course, while you are playing, you are sitting in the same spot. But for example, when the intro is running, but you are still off stage. For this, the U4 is great because, well, sometimes it can get a little bit hectic when it's really dark on stage, the fog machines are going crazy, and you go on stage as a drummer and the first thing you gotta do is find where you have to plug yourself in. And then maybe you realize, oh no, the volume is not correct or something. And I can tell you this can get really dicey sometimes. So with the U4 you can already hear everything, you're already connected, and you can just go on stage and focus on actually playing drums. And this is great. Also you can do fun stuff like stand up between songs to be seen and to interact more with the audience without having to worry about the cable maybe being too short. And you can also go off stage between songs or when you are not playing and stuff like that. I mean, this really opens up a lot of possibilities when it comes to things that can make your live show better and more interesting. So after all is said and done, and after all these tests, let us finally come to a conclusion about the Xvive U4 wireless in-ear monitoring system. I feel like I do not even have to say that much because the facts pretty much speak for themselves. I mean, on all the technical parameters, this thing really excels. To quickly summarize, let's start with the delay, which is which really is, as promised, less than 5 milliseconds. And this is, well, for all practical purposes, this delay is non-existent. I mean, listen to this. Did you hear a delay? I didn't hear one either. And this was what I recorded during my delay test, with one of the clicks having the slight delay. So it sounds just like one click and not like two clicks that are apart from each other. When you zoom in really closely in Studio One, you can see the difference, but you cannot really hear it. So, as I said, for all practical purposes, the delay is basically non-existent. Regarding battery endurance, even the officially stated 5 hours are more than enough for a lengthy soundcheck plus a lengthy show without having to recharge. And as I found out, the actual battery endurance is much more than that. At over 10 hours, still both transmitter and receiver had more than 10% left. So even if you forget to recharge this thing between two shows, you still should be absolutely okay. The maximum range of the U4 is, with 27 meters or 90 feet, absolutely sufficient for all stages, no matter if you play a small club show or a big festival show. And apart from that, in my test, the range was actually more like 30 meters and, well, let's say the stable range was more like 30 meters, and the maximum range was more like, yeah, well, apparently more than 50 meters. Next point is interference. So far I have had no trouble whatsoever with interference, so unless you directly hold this to an active Wi-Fi box, you shouldn't get into any trouble at all. And even when you do, you can simply change the channel and then this will probably get rid of the trouble. Also, the Xvive U4 easily goes through walls, unless you have like a 1 meter thick steel concrete bunker wall, which even cell phone signals don't go through. So I guess it's safe to say that all in all, on all the technical parameters, this thing works really well. Apart from the technical side of things, this thing is mainly super user-friendly. I mean, it's truly plug and play, and probably even a small child could figure out the buttons on this. Apart from that, you can use this anywhere in the world without having to worry about the frequency issues, which is great. And by the way, I read in the manual that the operating temperature of this thing goes from minus 18 degrees Celsius to plus 57. I mean, really, what the hell? I mean, it also says in the manual that this range might be limited by the battery functionality, but still, this is quite ridiculous. So in the end, well, as you might remember, I wanted to make this a review and not an advertisement, but I gotta admit, I have a hard time finding anything that I can truly criticize on this. I mean, yeah, maybe the power switch on the receiver is not as solidly built as the rest, but it's still okay. It's not like this is super bad and will immediately break or something. So yeah, whatever. And what else is there to criticize? Maybe that this thing doesn't go through a 1 meter thick bunker wall? So all in all, I just have to say this is really good. It performed really well in all the technical tests, and I will definitely keep using this in the future because this is making my life as a drummer a lot easier, and I'm really looking forward to using this in a live performance. So after everything, my final conclusion is this. The Xvive U4 wireless in-ear monitoring system is awesome. So a big thank you to Xvive for sending this to me. I had a lot of fun coming up with all the tests and doing all this, and I have a lot of fun using this. This is really a very useful addition to my personal technical equipment. If you are now interested in the Xvive U4, well, then you can simply check out the links down below in the description. And if you want to learn more about drum-related equipment, amongst many other things, like for example, how to get fast at double bass and blast beats, well, then definitely check out the Nechtan Drum School. The Drum School is not always open to new members, but in case it is not, when you click on the link, well, then you can simply put yourself on a waitlist and you will be notified once the Drum School reopens. And with that being said, thanks for watching, like and subscribe, and see you next time.